So previously I put out a video on how to call your data within Siril before you get to your final stacking step. And that works well, right? But the plot tab is not available until you get through registration. So that means you have to create your sequence, calibrate your files, register them, and then call through your data using the plot tab. A lot of you wanted something similar like the blink function in PixInsight. So one of the developers at Siril has put together something. It's not exactly like blink, but it's very close. It allows you to blink through your data as well as filter through that data without needing to go through the calibration and registration steps first that we need to do for the plot tab. So it does a few other things as well, like sorting your data by frame types, as well as filters that are used and multi-night sessions. So it's a really powerful script. This is a little bit of a long video because I want to give you guys some good examples on how to use it. So let's check it out. My name is Rich and you're watching Deep Space Astro. Obviously we need to install the script first, so if you haven't already, just come up to your scripts menu, go into get scripts, and then in the search bar just start typing blink, and it should pop up for you right there. Blink, browse, filter, and sort. Select it on the right hand side and then click apply. Now I'm going to give a few different use cases for this, so we're going to demo a few different ways that you can use the script. I'm going to start with the easier things first, and then we'll get into more of the advanced features to show you guys how you can help call through your data and even organize your data depending on what your needs are. So the first one is going to be just a simple blink through an existing sequence. Sequences are created one of two ways, either manually, so if you're processing your data manually, you're creating those sequences as you go, or if you use one of the scripts. So for example, if you're using the OSC pre-processing script or the C-star pre-processing script, all of those scripts will create sequences for you that we can blink through with the script. So in order to do that, you want to set your working directory to your process directory. So if I come over here to Edge HD, SH2 106, and I select my process directory for my working directory, click open. So now we'll just come over to my sequence tab, click on search sequences, and this project I processed everything manually and stacked everything manually. So I'm just going to grab my HA sequence down here that's already been registered, background extraction applied to it, as well as the individual lights have all been calibrated. And with the sequence loaded, now I'm going to come over to scripts, Python scripts, utility, and then run the blink, browse, filter, and sort script. Now what you'll notice when you start with an open sequence like we just did, you'll have a mode selection. We are in sequence mode, and we can also go over into directory mode, and I'll talk about that in a second. But right now we're in sequence mode, and in sequence mode, that's all you can really do is just blink through the images. So if I click go, it'll flip through each and every one of the images for me. I can speed up that process with the duration by making the duration lower, and I can slow it down by taking it the other direction and increasing the time for each frame to be displayed. You can pause it, stop it, resume. You can go frame by frame with your previous and next if you just want to take a closer look at them. With that, I'm actually flipping through automatically. The toggle include, select, and unselect and invert selection really don't come into play when you're in sequence mode. This is more for building sequences when we're in directory mode. There's no analysis and filtering, and the reason there's no analysis and filtering is because we can already do this in the plot tab since we already have our sequence. So again, in sequence mode, this is strictly just to blink through your images. And also above the image here, self-explanatory, but just to point them out, you have zoom in, zoom out, and also fit to preview. The window can be resized if you need it to be bigger. Just grab one of the corners or the edges, hit fit to preview, and it'll go into a larger view for you as well. Okay, so directory mode, that's the next one we're going to talk about. You can get to directory mode in one of two ways. If you have a sequence open, like we have right now, this is the only time that you will see this mode up here is if you have a sequence open. So if you wanted to jump over into directory mode from here, simply hit the radio button and it takes you into directory mode. The other way to get into directory mode, and I'm going to close everything down just to show you guys, is to not have a sequence open and then run the script. So if I close the script, and we'll just shut Siril down and open it back up, and I do not have a sequence open, you can see that here, it's still blank. And if I was to run the script, again, under Python scripts, utility, blink, browse, filter, and sort, you can see it puts us right into directory mode, and there is no option to go back to sequence mode. So it's the same thing, just a couple different ways of getting there. Most of the time, if you're looking to use directory mode, I think this is how you're going to use it. You're just going to open up Siril and you're going to run the script and start working from there. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to look at a use case where you just want to blink through and review all of the light images that you've taken on any given session. We're not talking about calibration frames or anything else, just strictly the light frame. So what I have here is NGC 6888, and in that folder I have 45 exposures that I took on that night. So what I'm going to do is change to that directory. So Edge HD, NGC 6888. Say select folder, and again, when you change the directory here, it's the same thing as if you were to have changed the directory using the blue house button in Siril. And you can see that my path in Siril, the working directory, is set to NGC 6888, the same path that I have here. Now we can do the same thing. I can click go and I can blink through them here. And just as an example, this is actually a pretty decent set of data for me. There were no clouds or anything like that, but if I stop this, and let's, for example, we'll click next, and you can see down here under image filtering, we have frame 1 of 45 is included, and then it's saying all 45 of those frames are included in this set. So just as an example, let's say my first 3 frames, there are some clouds rolled in, so I don't want to use those. I can click my toggle include, and it'll put an X through that frame indicating that it's not going to include it. And you can see down at the bottom here, it says frame 1 of 45 is excluded. And now we have 44 of 45 included. So we'll do the first 3. So I'll go to the next frame and hit my toggle include, next frame, toggle include, and then again down the bottom you can see I've excluded 3 of the 45 frames. I do not want them to be included. At this point, I can simply hit create sequence. It'll tell me that it created the sequence. It processed 42 files, rejected 3. So we have 42 over 45 that we're going to be using. I click OK, and if I wanted to process those images manually, then I can come over into my sequence tab and hit search sequences, and there's the sequence I just created for me. And I can run through my normal calibration and then my registration. I can do additional culling on the plot tab if I wanted to, and then at the end create the final stack. If you wanted to use one of the scripts to do all that work for you, then you can. You would just have to come over into your working directory, and you can see there's a new folder in here called rejected, and if I was to open that up, it moved. It did not delete. It just moved those 3 images that I excluded using the script. So now I'm just left with the 42 in my original directory here that it left behind. You also notice we have our sequence in here that it created for us, as well as all the symbolic links. So when you click the create sequence button, it'll create the sequence for you in the same directory as your lights, as well as create a rejected folder and put the ones that you excluded into that rejected folder. So again, if I wanted to use what was included in our selection, I could just grab these files, cut them over into another working directory. Let's say we'll just call this one 6888, paste them into there, and then I can come back up into Siril and set my working directory to that new directory where I just copied my files. Then I can come up and I can run whichever script that I wanted to run to process those images. In this case, since they're just the light frames, if those are from the C-Star, I would run the C-Star script, or if they're from a traditional astronomy camera, I could install the OSC pre-processing script without darks, biases, and flats and run from there. So the other thing that I can do, and I am actually going to reset everything here and start over. So let's move these back into our original directory here. I'm going to pull the ones in the rejected folder back out and put them back where they are at in the beginning and just clean everything up. We'll delete the rejected folder, and I'm going to delete my sequence and the symbolic links. So now we're back to my 45 original light frames. So I'm going to close the script and rerun it just so it's all refreshed. It doesn't have any additional settings left in behind. And then come up again into Python scripts utility and run the script again. We're going to change this back to the NGC one. Select folder. And now this time, instead of going through the blink and select section like we did and toggling on and off what we want to include and exclude, I'm going to come down here and I'm going to tell the script to analyze files. You can watch it here as it goes through the analysis or over in the console. Give it a few minutes depending on how many files you have. Obviously, it'll take longer the more files that it's analyzing. Okay, so the analysis is complete. It's gone through all 45 of my files. And if I was to expand the image filtering section here, I'll move this over to the side and make our window a little bit bigger so we can see everything. You can see we have 5 different options to tell it to automatically include and exclude frames based on these parameters. So the way you use this is click your plot analysis results button, and it'll bring up this plot for you. Let me resize this down so we can get them both side by side. And then you can make decisions based on what you see in your plot. So as an example, if I want to filter by full width, half maximum, I can put a tick mark next to filter by FWHM over here. And again, just as an example, because this is actually pretty good data, I wouldn't exclude these, but just to show you how everything works. If I wanted to only include the images where the FWHM is lower than 6, then I would put 6 in as the value for that. And the same thing, I can filter by background noise if I wanted to. Any of these 5. So you can select 1, 2, 3, all of them. It's up to you how you want to filter through everything. We'll just stick with the FWHM for now, being lower than 6, to exclude anything that's lower than 6. And then we'll close our plot. We don't need that any longer. And then we'll click on Filter Images. We'll get a message that the filter was applied successfully and that 20 out of the 45 images in our folder passed that criteria. 25 of them were excluded because their FWHM was higher than the 6. So we click OK, and then one final step is to again say create sequence. That is when it actually creates a sequence and moves those 25 folders to that rejected folder. So we'll click OK, and again, if we come back over into our folder, we can see our sequence and our symbolic links were created, and then our rejected folder was created again with the 25 images that it found that did not meet our criteria that we specified. And again, just like we did last time, I can process this stuff manually because I have the sequence, or I can take these images here and move them into another folder and run one of the scripts against those images to get the pre-processing and stacking done for me automatically. Choice is yours. One thing I do want to note is you cannot combine those 2 techniques together. So if you were to come into blink and select and exclude the first 3 like we did in our example, and then run an analysis and come down here and filter by FWHM or any of these values, they don't work together. So if you excluded 3, those 3 are still going to be included in the analysis report down here and will be affected only by the filter, not by the fact that you excluded them. So one or the other. So the next demonstration I wanted to show you guys is if you have all your lights and your calibration frames all in one folder, how the script can actually sort all that stuff out for you. So what I have done here is I have a M31 directory. That's over in my Red Cat. Right, and inside of here I have just that. I have all of my lights, all of my darks, all of my biases, all of my flats, absolutely everything thrown into one single directory. So if I again come up here and run the script, change my directory to that M31 directory where I have all of my lights and calibration frames. So now you could actually blink through all these, but that's a pretty useless function, right? You'll be blinking through your lights, your darks, your biases, your flats. I mean, maybe you want to for one reason or another, but at this point, you wouldn't be using the blink and the select. This is the sorting part of the script. So the first thing I'm going to do is just click Analyze Files, and that'll take a few minutes because I have how many files in here? 280. So we'll let that analysis finish and then come right back and continue on with the process. Okay, it has analyzed all 280 of my files for me. And again, similar to like the blink and select where I said this is not a good use case for it because I would be blinking through all of my calibration frames as well. Same thing with the image filtering. You wouldn't want to try and filter all these images with your calibration frames and such. So options are available, doesn't mean you should use them. So once we're done with the analysis, if I simply hit sort images and then come back over into my working directory, and you can see now M31, instead of that folder containing all of my lights and my calibration frames, I see 2 new folders and all my files have been moved into those folders. So the first one dated August 27th, that is the night of my session. So I have my biases automatically thrown into a biases folder and a sequence created for them. Same thing for the flats. They were moved into the flats as well as a sequence created. And then my lights have all been moved into the lights folder. No sequence created for the lights because we may want to go through and use the filtering now before we create that sequence. So that's why there's no sequence in the lights folder. If we come back up into 828, well, the reason 828 was created, I did not shoot my darks that night. I shot them the next morning. So it created a darks folder, moved the darks over there with the dark sequence. And again, it was dated 828 because that's when I created the darks. So at this point, like I said, we have sequences for all of our calibration frames, but not for our lights yet. So if we come back over into the script, we can do the same thing that we did in the previous example, and we could run our plot analysis. And again, I'm just gonna do this real quick, and we'll just use 3.5 again on the FWHM. So we'll select FWHM, we'll say 3.5, we'll say filter images, okay. And now create sequence. You can see it moved 14 of them into the rejected. And if we come back over into our lights folder, we now have that rejected folder with the rejected images moved into it, as well as our light sequence created. So again, if you're working manually, you can see it changed our working directory to that lights folder where we just created the sequence. So if I come over to my sequence tab and hit search sequence, there's my sequence. And then I can go through and do my calibration. If I wanted to build my master calibration files, right, it built the sequences for us. So I would just change my working directory. If I wanted to build my master bias, select my working directory of the bias, click open, sequence tab, search sequences, there's my bias sequence, and I can go through and stack my bias, the whole manual process of doing this thing, right? And then again, you can do this manually, or you can go to each one of these individual folders if you wanted to, and move out everything that it's sorted for you into another folder structure so you can run the scripts against it, right? I can take my biases out of here and put them into a bias folder, and then the same thing with the flats, and the same thing with the darks, and then the same thing with the lights. Build that normal folder structure that the scripts always require, and then run the scripts against them. So the last use case for the script that I want to show you is not only can it sort your types of images, so lights, darks, flats, and biases, it can sort by filters used as well. So again, we're going to run the script, and what I have set up over here under NGC 7000 is I have dumped a bunch of different files, taken with different filters, mono, without filters. You can see down here I have 1,142 images all dumped into the same folder. So if I was to come back over into Siril now and change my directory once again to the directory that I want to work in, which is NGC 7000, select folder, and then tell it to analyze. Again, I've got over 1,100 images in this directory right now, so this will take a few minutes, and once it's done, we'll come back and I'll hit that sort images button and show you the new folder structure that it created and sorted all of our data for us within a matter of just a couple minutes. All right, so it has finished analyzing all of my images, and you can see there's also a warning here saying multiple image sizes detected, manual review required. Like I said, I just dumped a bunch of stuff all in this one directory so I can show you guys all the sorting that it can do. But that's also something to watch out for in case you have a legitimate session that you're working on. And if there are different sizes of your images, then you need to pay attention to that, right? So that check is in there for us. So just be aware of that. So if we come over again into my working directory, right here is NGC 7000 with all of our images in one. Now that the analysis is complete, I'm just going to click sort images, and you can see it's doing its thing over on the console, and it's done. If I come over into my working directory, there we go. We have our dated folders again. And if I go through them, the first one I open up says no filter, and that is because the data, the lights that were taken, there was no filter information in the fits header, right? So it labeled it as no filter. It put the matching flats in there for us. And then here's my lights that match to those flats. We back up to August 31st. There's my hydrogen alpha, my oxygen 3, and my sulfur 2, and each one of them will have the matching flats sorted. Right, same thing for O3. We have our flats and our lights, and our sulfur, our flats and our lights. It's sorted all that information out for us. And if I go into September 2nd, Not only do I have my SH&O, but I also have my RGB. So it saw what was shot with my blue filter and sorted the flats and lights in its own directory. Same thing with the green filter, same thing with the red filter. So like I said, in the matter of minutes, it has sorted all of my data out for me and organized it by filter with the proper calibration frames that I had in that initial folder structure. If I come back over into the script, again, because you're going to be doing this manually more than likely, you can see under my session, I have multiple sessions to choose from. Now, it's not combining them all, so you can see I have a session for HA on August 31st, and I also have one on September 2nd. But what I can do is select HA. I could go through my image filtering like we did in the previous examples. I'm not going to do it now, but I could filter all these images based on my analysis results. And then when I'm done and I'm happy with what I have set up, I can click Create Sequence. And again, it'll create the sequence for me, change my directory to 831 HA lights. So if I come over in a sequence, hit Search Sequences, there's a sequence that just created for me. And once again, I can run through my calibration, my registration. I can do additional culling in the plot tab after registration and then stack it. So it has saved me tons of time by organizing all that data for me into a folder structure that makes complete sense. So the last thing that I want to show you, I know I said this was the last example, but what I wanted to show you guys as well, if we come back over into our 6688, I'm just getting this folder structure back to nothing but my lights. And this happens with the smart scope sometimes. You copy your data over from your C-Star, your Dwarf, or any of the other ones out there, and sometimes they come over with JPEGs. So the script can help you with that. So I'm just going to paste in a couple of JPEGs in my directory here with all my lights frames. So you see we got two of them down here in the bottom. And when we come up and run the script, make sure my working directory is set to NGC 6888. We analyze the files. And then just like I was showing you, you go through your image filtering, sorting out the images that you don't want to be included. The moment that you click Create Sequence, what it's going to do, if we could jump back into the working directory, you can see those two JPEG files are missing now. It has removed them, created a rejected folder, and placed them in the rejected folder. So now, whether I'm using the sequence that it created for me, those JPEGs won't get in the way, or if I was to come in here again and copy all of my light frames and move them to another location to run one of the Siril scripts against, the chances of me bringing over those JPEG images have been removed because it moved them into that rejected folder for us. So very powerful script. I've been using it for a few weeks now, and it's kind of accelerated my whole process a little bit for me when I start. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Before you go, I want to say thanks to all my members here on YouTube and on Buy Me a Coffee. I appreciate everybody's support. Thanks to all of you that share and like the video. It really helps the channel grow. If you're not a subscriber, please consider subscribing. Also consider becoming a member. All my members have free access to my beginner's guide for Siril, along with your name being scrolled at the end of all of my videos. So again, appreciate everybody's support. Thanks for your time. We'll see you on the next video, and clear skies.